Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with the one and only Paul Mecurio, a comedian, actor, Emmy Award-winning writer, and on top of it all, a former Wall Street lawyer and investment banker. He has a popular podcast, The Paul Mecurio Show, where he has interviewed many big names in comedy, such as Adam Carolla, who we had on last month, Stephen Colbert, Jay Leno, and most recently, Larry the Cable Guy, aka Dan Whitney. First of all, Paul, I got to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview. And how are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm psyched. This is like an international interview.
Oh,
You're in Canada.
that's
I'm
it.
in New York.
I
feel very big time.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm like the Jay-Z of comedy, except my wife doesn't have Beyonce's ass.
Oh,
Other than that.
I feel bad for you. I'm a booty man myself. I can't lie.
Yeah. My wife's she's very white. Very white.
Oh.
But in this day and age, I think if you're going to be any color, I think you want to be white right now. I think that's actually better.
Ooh,
So,
I'm saving that question for later, actually. But first of all, Paul, I gotta ask you started as a Wall Street lawyer. And then worked your way into comedy. Please, to all our listeners in Canada and some in the States, actually, and actually we have quite a following in Russia now for some reason.
Really, I'm big in Russia.
There you go.
I'm huge.
See, I'm known to be a connoisseur of Russian pornography, so I don't know.
What does that involve? Just people sitting there naked staring at.
You know what? It usually involves a guy going in a street with large sums of cash and bribing women to sleep with them.
Right. It's men jerking off to a naked Putin.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend that we haven't all done that. Come on.
Man, have you seen him? He looks sexy without a shirt on.
Oh, when he's on that horse, you gotta blow him and the horse.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul.
By the way, I was on Wall Street. I was doing like M&A deals. I went to Georgetown Law School, and I ended up in New York City doing these huge merger and acquisition deals. And people are like, well, what's M&A? And that's when like companies buy and sell each other. So like, the best way to describe it is analogize. It's like eating a meal. Like you have a salad and then you have a steak, and you mash that all together, and that's the acquisition. And then a few days later, you take a really huge shit. That's the merger. And I was the colon. It all went through me.
Wow.
Right? And,
okay.
So I started writing jokes as a hobby. I don't know why. And I got to see Jay Leno perform at like a private function somewhere.
Nice.
And I went up to him after the show, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you need jokes, but I have these jokes. Would you like some jokes? And he's like, and he really does talk like they're letting helium out of a balloon very slowly. Like when he talks, you want to go like, breathe, for God's sake. And I figured he just was being nice and he's going to throw them away. And the next day, my phone rings, and Jay Leno's on the phone. And he goes, I read your stuff, and start sending jokes in for the Tonight Show monologue. And if I need anything, I'll use it, and I'll pay you for it.
Nice.
And he goes, by the way, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a comedian. He goes, I knew it. I go, what? He goes, I said, I'm a lawyer, rather. I'm a lawyer.
Oh.
He goes, I knew it. I go, what? Why? He goes, your setups are way too long. You're too wordy. You write like a lawyer. He goes, write a lot less. And you don't need to tell me when to make a funny face. I was giving him like stage direction and everything else. So that's kind of how it started, right? And so then, and people say to me, like, did you know you were going to be a comedian? I'm like, no, I was a lawyer. And then they go, like, they always ask me, like, were you funny? I'm like, well, yeah, I was always the funniest lawyer in my law firm, which is kind of like being the sexiest IT guy, you know?
Does that even exist?
Exactly, right. Well, I was funny, though. I'd say these really wacky things to get laughs from the other lawyers, stuff like, we can't do that. That's unethical. And they would laugh and laugh and laugh. So I started writing these jokes. And then he said, go try the jokes out before you send them to me. Mm-hmm. And I did. And I started to live this secret double life where I was like a lawyer by day and a comedian by night. And I'd sneak out of work and I'd go to these dive bars around New York City working these open mic nights. Because when you start out, you don't work clubs, you work dive bars. And I'm sure that's the same in Canada. You work
for sure.
Little, like, Tuesday night.
Open mics.
Front of the back of the, exactly. And, one of the places I worked was called Downtown Beirut 2. It was literally called, we had a 2. Like, I guess they were franchising these shitholes, or, Israeli fighters took out one. I'm not sure. And you had to have comeback lines for drunk hecklers, and I got really good at it.
Yeah.
Too good at it, to the point where my night job started spilling over into my day job. So I'm waiting to go on stage one night, and there's a fight at the pool table, and a guy runs out of the bar, and another guy grabs his neck, and he starts screaming, "He cut me, man! He cut me!" And he's bleeding from the neck. It was a drug deal gone bad, because they were dealing drugs out of it. A pimp worked out of here, a hooker worked out of it. There was a sign on the men's room door that said the toilet seat is only to be used to go to the bathroom, not to cut coke. Thank you, the management. That was actually a sign on the door.
Did they spread Vaseline on the toilet bowl?
Yeah, exactly. They actually had razor blades in the bathroom so you could cut your coke when you were in there.
Fuck.
Right? It was like,
what service?
And I'm waiting to go on stage, and while I'm on stage, there's a guy playing "Blowing in the Wind" badly, like "Yeah, so my friend," like that, right? This guy gets his neck cut, and he's screaming, "He cut me, man!" And he was drunk. His girlfriend's like, "Oh my God, look at my boyfriend! He cut me!" And the guy on stage just keeps going, "Yeah, so my friend," like he's not getting off stage for anything, right? So I think the show's over. The MC goes up. He goes, "All right, you guys ready for some comedy?"
Oh fuck!
So I go on stage in my white Wall Street little suit, and I start trying to tell my joke, and I say, "Nice to be here at downtown Beirut too. I always wanted to follow a slashing," which I thought was a pretty good line, right?
I like that.
That's a great start.
Yeah. And the guy heard me say slashing, who got his neck slashed, because now he's like wandering around the bar drunk with all these bloody napkins, and he turns to me, he goes, "Hey, you making fun of me? I don't even take any shit from you, you little bastard." And he charges the stage, and he throws all these bloody napkins at me, and they land, and they hit me right on my shirt. They
Holy
hit my
shit.
shirt.
Holy.
I know. So now a normal person says, "Get off stage." I stay. I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this come hell or high water, right?
Yeah.
I got this huge grapefruit-sized stain of blood on my shirt, and I'm trying to tell my jokes. Nobody's listening. It's mayhem. The cops are there taking a police report. He's wandering around dripping blood from his neck.
Jesus.
And he turns back to me, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "what are you doing anyway?" I go, "I'm trying to tell jokes." He goes, "Oh, yeah?" He goes, "Everybody, shut the fuck up. This guy's trying to tell jokes." And the whole place shuts up, right? I had the best 2 minutes of my life. I finished because everybody listened to me. I get back in the car. I go back to work. I was gone an hour. I was gone 4 hours, so I was supposed to be gone an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I dressed back up. I put my suit tie back on, my jacket. I got this huge blood stain on my shirt. I'm walking around with a file trying to hide the blood stain. And the deal blew up. People couldn't find me. There was this huge conference room with like 20 other lawyers, and this lawyer who works at our firm, a big corporate firm, and it's like this big senior partner, never stays past 6 o'clock. It's pissed as shit. It's midnight. He goes, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" He goes, "Why do you have a blood stain on your shirt?" And before I could say, and I figured I'm dead. Like, you know when your father catches you and you're like, you're dead? You're dead, right? And before I could say anything, one of the other lawyers goes, "What kind of shirt is that?" I go, "Brooks Brothers." He goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "I know how to get blood out of a Brooks Brothers shirt."
Only a lawyer would know that, too.
Yeah, exactly. And then another lawyer goes, No. He goes, "Armani, that's the shirt you want when you get blood." Like, who knows? What are you doing that you're getting? So that became my life for like 2 years, where I was like hiding one world from the other world, and it was just insanity. And I was having a nervous breakdown, and then I finally decided to do it full time. You know,
that's amazing. Now,
my wife, who was then my girlfriend at the time, thought I was cheating on her. When I finally told her, like, I want to be a comedian, she goes, "Oh, thank God." I go, "Why?" She goes, "Well, I thought you were cheating on me." I go, "Why?" She goes, "Well, you were supposed to be at work all night, and you were coming home reeking of beer and cigarette smoke, and you had blood stains on your shirt." I didn't know. I thought you were like, I don't know if it was like you were in Fight Club. I didn't know what you were doing, right?
See, I had the same argument with an ex-girlfriend of mine when I used to do a lot of open mics, because you'd be out until like 3 a.m. You got to wait in line, put your name on the paper, hope you get picked. And then when I would come home, she's like, "What were you doing out so late?" I'm like, "Oh, I was at an open mic." And she's like, "You're not funny." And I'm like, "I'm funny enough." And then she was like, "You're not out screwing around on me." I'm like, "I'm not that good looking." And she's like, "Good point." And we never had that discussion again.
Yeah, exactly. My wife said the same thing. You're never funny at home. Actually, when I first told her I wanted to leave Wall Street to be a comedian, she looked at me and she went, "That better be your first joke."
I could imagine it's quite the pay cut going from a Wall Street lawyer to working, almost getting stabbed at these dive bars.
Yeah, and then getting stiffed on money. And then I had to work with one guy. I don't know if you do this in Canada, but like a lot of times starting out like as a host on like legitimate shows.
Yeah.
You have a car and you can drive somebody. They'll give you some work and they pay you like $50. So I had a car and I would drive, and I had to pick this guy up who was like some big name from L.A. I kind of heard his name, and he was so like hyped up and like it turned out he was like coked up and he was like long stringy hair. He's like, yeah man, like I'm a mix between like George Carlin and Robin Williams.
Oh
I'm edgy.
fuck.
I talk about whatever, like one of those guys. And I don't know, like I'm new, so I'm like, what do I know, right? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, oh, like, you know, you want to do some blow? I'm like, no, I'm driving right now. I'm a little preoccupied, right? Like, right. So we go to the show and he does his act and it's like a really bad, like he's trying to do Robin Williams meet like George Carlin, but it's just this terrible, like whatever. And then he ends his act with, and I just have an okay set. Like I'm new at it, so I'm not great, right? And I'm watching it. And I'm trying to watch and learn. You know how you're trying to watch and learn and whatever. And he ends his act. I swear to God, doing these. Now this is a guy who claimed to be like the second coming of fucking George Carlin and Bill Hicks, right? Or Robin Williams, right? This is how he ends his act. He takes the steel rod and he swallows it.
Oh.
Then he fills his mouth with like lighter fluid and he blows fire. And then he takes like this heavy gauge dental floss and he sucks it into his nose and through his nasal passage and out his mouth and he flosses his nasal passage.
Holy
right?
shit.
Yeah. And here's the worst part, guys. The fucking audience goes crazy and they stand up and start giving a standing ovation as he's flossing his nasal passage. Yeah. And if I had a gun, I would have put it in my fucking mouth. Because I was like, this is what I got to do to get over, right? And then the night ends with me having to drive him to like Harlem to get cocaine. I need to get the blow, man. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Hey, Paul, I think I saw that same guy on America's Got Talent.
That guy is David Letterman.
No, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense.
Yeah, it all comes full circle.
Oh, now, Paul, I gotta ask. I know you being an Italian, you coming from an Italian background. Now, was your family immigrated from Italy?
My parents were born here. My grandparents were born in Italy.
Okay.
But we're very Italian.
And I gotta ask.
So we're Italian. And are you half Italian?
No, I'm Portuguese. So.
We have a lot of we call them Portuguese in Rhode Island.
Or pork chops.
And you guys have sweetbread. You have sweetbread.
Oh yeah, the masa.
Oh man, that's good stuff.
Yeah, don't fuck around.
People, you're kind of like Puerto Rican, but you're not.
Hey,
like
I'm offended. Jesus.
You're Puerto Rican without the spandex. And do you have a big Portuguese population up there in Toronto?
Actually, yeah. We have little Italy. We have little Portugal. There's actually a very large community of both Italy and Portuguese and Italian. Now, I just gotta ask if, like, I told my parents I started a podcast, and they have no idea what the fuck this is. They still think every time I go over, they're like, "What radio station are you on?" I'm like, "No, Ma, I'm not on the radio. I have a podcast." What's a podcart? But anyway, I gotta ask.
Well, hey, by the way,
yeah.
I feel for you because when I told my mother I wanted to be a comedian, she goes, "Ooh, they do a lot of drugs in those clubs."
Oh my God!
Way more drugs.
That's exactly what my mom would say. But what were your parents' reaction when they found out you wanted to leave, like a 6-figure gig to getting some stranger's blood on your shirt?
Let me see if I can paraphrase my mother's reaction. Why? Why? You're killing me.
Yeah, I'm dying a little.
Yeah. Wasn't I a good mother? Eat! You're getting skinny. Yeah, so, my parents, high school educated, a furniture store. My father put floors in for a living. And, and they're very, like, in some ways blue collar. They're progressive but blue collar, but very Italian. Well, in some ways they're Italian. There's two stereotypes when you hear Italian. You either think mafia or plastic on the furniture. That's what you think.
I definitely have one of those in my family. We have everything is waiting for the queen.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's the same thing in Canada. And so, like, there was that room where literally, like, it had, like, the really nice furniture. Mm-hmm. And for the Italian household, and maybe for the Portuguese, too, there's a picture of the Pope, Jesus, and Frank Sinatra in that room, and that was it, right?
No
you
Sinatra.
Couldn't go in that room. Right. But our house was the opposite. Our house was a pigsty growing up, because the focus of my mother's life and parents' life was this furniture store.
Nice.
And this is how bad our house is. This is a true story. Someone broke into the house and they took the stereo. They didn't touch another thing in the house. They were in and they were out in like 2 minutes.
Wow.
Cop comes in to take a police report. Stands in the middle of the living room. Now remember, the guy didn't touch anything else in the house. He just took the stereo and left. Cop stands in the middle of the living room and he goes, "Oh my God, what kind of an animal would make a mess like this?" And he goes, the guy broke in and ransacked the house. I'm like, yeah, he was crazy. He left the bra and the lampshade and salami out all day. He was nuts, right?
The prosciutto.
But the mafia part is true. My cousin Bobby runs numbers. He's a small-time hood in Rhode Island, and I'm sure you got him in Canada,
Oh,
too.
for sure, yeah.
And he runs numbers, and the front is a woman's shoe store. He knows nothing about shoes. Like, picture John Travolta, like, in Saturday Night TV trying to sell you shoes. Like, hey, what do you need? Like a size 7 pump, you know? And he's always standing on the street corner, like, his legs are always moving, like one of those guys, like, hey, how you doing? How you doing? Like, he's got a live snake in his pants, you know, one of these guys. And he sells stuff out of the trunk of his car. He sells suits, ratchets, and I'm not making this up. He sells car alarms that he stole out of other people's cars.
Wow.
Wait, that doesn't make sense. They gotta be pretty shitty car alarms if you're able to steal them.
Well, that's what I told him. I said, you realize this is a good car alarm if you're able to steal it? And he goes, hey, what are you talking about? It just doesn't have the box. It's fine. Here, give me $25, right?
Jesus.
And this is how he came dressed to my father's funeral. This is what we call him Guidos. This is what Guido is.
Oh, we got those here.
He came in a fluorescent orange silk shirt, unbuttoned gold chain.
Oh, my God.
White patent leather belt, white slack. Like a creamsicle with chest hair.
Wow.
And then white mesh loafers, no socks because it was the summer.
Oh.
But you got to put powder on your feet to keep them dry. But Bobby, being like the Guido that he was, put so much powder, every time he'd step toward the casket, puffs of white smoke were coming out of the tops of his shoes.
Oh, my God.
I'm like,
that's
hey, somebody's
amazing.
nominating a pope. This is awesome, you know.
See, that's funny.
So my coming from a family like that, they don't understand the move, you know.
Yeah.
But then when and I'm not whatever, but when we won our first Emmy Award for The Daily Show and I brought that home, then that whore mother of mine understood why I made the move. Okay?
Well,
that's how that. Yeah. Then she kind of understood, you know, like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting and cool, you know.
See, in my family, I could bring home 10 Emmy Awards, and they would still never understand exactly what I was getting myself into.
Yeah, but you know what? Listen, I use my parents and family for, like, I use it. Like, I don't even have to write an act anymore. Like, my mother locks people in, she's like 80. She forgets people are in the store because she wears a hearing aid and you can't hear and it whistles all the time. It's like that.
Oh, my.
It's like,
Oh!
It's like talking to a tea kettle in a house dress. It's like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And she forgets people are in the store, and she locks customers in the store, like in the middle of the day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, like I don't have to write anything anymore. Like I literally go in the store, I go, man, what happened? She goes, I was looking around, I turned to ask your mother a question, I couldn't get out. I said, how long have you been here? She goes, 5 hours.
Fuck off.
I go,
Oh,
what do you
my
do?
God.
She goes, really, 5 hours, right? I go, what do you even do? She goes, well, I browsed a lot. She goes, I took a nap on that sofa because I got tired.
Oh, my.
And then I go, she goes, is your name Paul? I go, yeah. She goes, well, the phone rang. You have messages. She took messages for me.
Oh, my
That's amazing.
God.
It's like,
This shoe store
And
is
then you
starting to sound like a front for mob activity.
exactly. And I said to her, I'm so sorry. She goes, oh, it wasn't so bad. And I felt bad. And then I started to think, that's like the worst place to be locked in a furniture store because it's so boring. You just die of boredom. Like, at least, I'd rather be like in a meat locker because at least you get 10 minutes to live. You start to go into like MacGyver mode. If I had a tampon and a pineapple, I could get out of this place. You know? Like,
Oh, wow. All right, Paul. Yeah. So I have a couple more questions. So what's your whole take on the East versus West Coast when it comes to comedy? Do you think that where you're from, whether it be LA or New York, has any effect on the type of comedian that you become?
I don't.
I
know some people do and like play that card, but I don't. I think it's about like look, there are comedians that work in New York where I work and they work the main clubs and they've got, you know, a little heat. I saw a guy actually talking about commercials and doing jokes about commercials and like it felt like something from the 80s. Like, and this is the guy who's working in New York. And I also don't subscribe to the theory that, you know, people who work the road, meaning not New York or LA, are necessarily more hacky or whatever. I've seen plenty of hacks in New York, plenty of hacks in LA, and plenty of good acts on the road who could work in New York and LA. I think it's about what you're saying, what you want to say, how personal your act is to you. Is it unique to you? Is it saying something that makes a difference to people? I think those are all the barometers for me if somebody's good or not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think maybe the reason LA gets that reputation a little bit is because, you know, networks generally are based in LA.
Yeah.
and they're looking for safe comedy generally, right?
Yeah,
They want to
exactly.
reach masses. So, like, if you're a development person at ABC looking to find the next star for sitcoms, are you going to put a guy on that's talking about race and this and that? Or are you going to put a guy on that's talking about, hey, a commercial and
Yeah, like John Mulaney.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like I think it's a function of the environment that maybe there's a certain level of I don't know, lack of edginess maybe that's perceived to be in LA, but I don't necessarily think LA comics are any better or any worse than New York comics. I don't categorize people based on their geography. Like, I've worked with guys in Ohio and Arizona, Omaha.
Yeah.
Middle act featured for me in Omaha one time. Very funny guy, but he's been married, he's got a family, he's from Omaha, didn't want to move. Just as good as anybody I've worked with. So I don't buy into that bullshit.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't like about comedy is it's very cliquish, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the whole reason we got into this was to be individuals and, like, not be trapped in fucking groups and shit like that. And the minute you do, those are a bunch of people with, that kind of comic, or you got to be that kind of comic, or whatever. Or you can only work in this kind of room.
You're all comic, you're edgy, you're clean.
I won't play that. I don't like to play that game at all. You know?
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more question.
Do you have that in Canada, by the way?
You know what? We were just talking about this before we called you. How Toronto, like any comedian, like we had Russell Peters, Jim Carrey started many years ago. Howie Mandel, they start here and then they get the fuck out right as soon as they can. It's just we don't like. Travis and myself, we are very huge comedy fans. Anytime I've seen Jim Gaffigan, Brian Callen, Rogan, we're huge fans, but there's just not enough demand here. So as soon as anyone gets traction, they just leave, and it's sad because us has like. I remember if I lived in LA or I went to New York City a few years ago, just walking down the street, I had a barker just be like, hey, with $8 comedy show, all you gotta do is buy 2 drinks. I have no idea who. I saw Judah Freelander and there was another opener, and I had a great time. Like there's so much comedy there, and I was it was great.
I do think New York is an easier place than LA. I don't want to say better because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk down to LA because I don't believe in that. Just in terms of working the craft. And everybody will tell you this. There's just more places to work.
Yeah, I heard Ari Shaffir talk about how he liked it because you could literally start out the night at 9:00 at night and go club to club. Make $50 here, $20 there. You could do 8-10 spots a night. Because there's so many comedy clubs. Is that true? Is that what you think? Does that make sense?
I've done that.
Yeah, and I don't think LA, you got the Comedy Store and the Improv, but you're sitting in 30 minutes of traffic just going between the both, I just don't think you could blitz.
Plus you're also you're dealing with much bigger stars in LA.
Yes.
Who are going to trump you.
Yeah, that's what we said. You could literally be walking down the street, go into the Comedy Store, and boom, see Chris Rock working out some new material. It's incredible, or Dane Cook, or many big names.
Right.
So
you get some of that in New York, but not as much because the bigger stars are out there because that's where the TV and film industry is.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely I think New York is definitely a place to go.
Yeah.
I call it the place to go in the middle, meaning you don't come here right away and start here, although I did because I was living here. Because once they see you, it's tough to change their perception of you if you're
okay.
If you're a new comic, you don't want to go too early because they see you and then you have to work on changing their perception of you later if you're not ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're big, you don't need to be in New York.
That's
you want to come to New York when you got chops to get past at the big club, and then you want to really work your craft and get really good and then be eventually a big guy. You know what I mean?
That's great. But
because sometimes people come and go, I'm going to come to New York. I see them on the road, and then they're coming to New York, and like 6 months later, they leave New York. What happened? Well, I couldn't get any spots. I wasn't making any money. I tried to get past. Nobody wanted blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, you got to really kind of come in with
guns a-blazing,
some juice or heat or something,
or
an act that's going to have people go, whoa, that was pretty amazing. I want to pass that guy.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, Paul, I just got to go right back to our earlier comment. So, I know you've done appearances in various.
No, I will not sleep with you.
Do you want to come
Don't
to
break his
Russia?
heart.
Do you want to go to Russia with me? No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, by the way, I'm going to be in Edmonton at the comic.
Perfect.
Next month.
Any Toronto appearances coming up?
I do not, but we're working on a couple of dates. We want to get me up there for sure.
Perfect, man.
You'll see us there if you come to town. We'll be there, front row.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got my info, so we should keep in touch. And if you're coming to New York, you should let me know. We'll get
Absolutely.
together.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so I just gotta have one last question.
I always say that. I don't really mean it, but
Gonna break our hearts, man.
I'm gonna troll you on Twitter now. So I gotta ask. So I know you've been involved with various political shows, Hannity, Red Eye. Now, what's your take on everything that's been going on with, France terror attack, the Sony hack, everything that's been putting threats and limitations to our freedom of speech? What's your take on all of this?
Listen, I think that you should be able to say what you want to say and not be intimidated by people. I don't like these Islamic fundamentalists who use parts of the Quran.
Yeah.
They're to justify their acts, which there's a part of the Quran that says the quote is, your voice shall not be larger than that of the prophet.
Huh.
And you can make the meaning, you always have to put the prophet first.
Yeah.
And you can make the argument that when you're doing these extreme acts, you're making your voice larger than the prophet.
Yeah.
So, I can select things from the Bible to make an argument for something or against something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, look, it's sad what happened. 3 of the guys, you've probably seen the news today. They killed 3 of them. And first of all, there is, and I'm not trying to be, people died and that's terrible, but there was always comedy and everything. Like, there's the bombers in Boston were brothers, and these 2 guys were brothers.
Yeah.
Is this like a new source of terrorist cells called families? Is that where we're getting our terrorist cell? Like, doesn't it seem weird that it's always brothers? And don't kill them. If you want to torture them, send them back to their families. That'll be the worst. That'll be worse than anything,
Yeah, I know.
And I think that the interview is tied to this, because I think what happened with the interview emboldened some of these people who were these fundamentalists, and they saw that North Korea was actually able to rattle us, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I don't think the theater should have caved and not shown it.
Yeah.
And Sony decided not to release it. And Obama said that, and I think it set a bad precedent, and I think it emboldened these other terrorists. And look, it was North Korea. What was the threat? They have the bomb. It's Korea.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do.
Have you ever owned anything made in Korea that's worked? The fucking thing's going to fall apart as they wheel it to the silo. Seriously, like.
Yeah, it'll backfire right on them.
It's like, oh, Jesus, that's the problem. Look, it's made in Korea. Of course, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
That was never going to work.
Yeah.
So I think it's all tied together. I think that there's going to be a ripple effect for a very long time with regard to the interview and what that did and what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And like even the AP, remember there was this thing called Piss Christ where they took the crucifix and they put it in guys' urine?
I remember that.
And I'm Catholic, right? So there were some Catholics who were offended by that.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
Well, the AP pulled it down, and the AP said, we don't show photos that are deliberately provocative.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's another term for photos that are deliberately provocative. It's called fucking news photos, asshole. Like, you don't want to provoke people into learning about the news? Like, what does that mean? Like, what you don't want to show, you don't want to report information that could potentially be provoking people into some action. Well, that's what news is supposed to do. It's supposed to give us information, let us decide what we want to do with that information.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of bad precedent being set.
Yeah.
And,
it's scary in a way.
I think there's another form of, you get these terrorists, you don't kill them, you just make them watch a prop act. That's all. Just make them
watch Carrot Top.
Not more Carrot Top, please.
Yeah, that's punishment in itself right there.
But I just think it's I don't even know. Do you get credit for? It's terrible. You're killing people over line drawing. Do you get laughed at by the other terrorists? Really? You killed somebody over a line drawing? Come on.
I know,
but bigger than that. You know what I mean? Like, how macho can you be? Like, I think this is going to be a defining moment, because if people start to stop, if people stop sort of, expressing their views for fear of retribution, then it's a slippery slope that you can't come back from, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when I was reading the news on this story to begin with, like, these terrorists, when they were cornered, they said, we want to die as martyrs. Like, they wanted to be killed. Like, I mean, the ultimate punishment would have been trying to capture them because they wanted to die. And to them, if they die, like, they're heroes back, you know, in Krapistan or wherever they're from. Like, they're heroes there. That's what they wanted to be seen as.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, I think ultimately, I don't think this ever changes, you know. I don't think that there's ever like, suddenly everybody gets along and we figured this all out. And look at the Middle East, right? That's been a problem for years. I think ultimately what ends up happening is, you just have to go back at these guys, and you have to go back at them hard. And, I mean, I think, and one of the ways you do that is, I don't know. You just, you capture them, you torture them, you make them watch Lifetime television. Maybe that's,
Put them on
Golden Girls. You make them watch the entire run of Golden Girls.
Oh,
I mean, at that point, so I think it's kind of it's the ninja. I was just on Red Eye last night. Actually, we were talking about this. And,
it's sad because especially I highly recommend our listeners and yourself, Paul, to go on YouTube and check out Bill Maher. He was on Jimmy Kimmel and he had some powerful words, and he talked about like pretty much exactly what you're saying. Like, we need to stop. Like, it's gone too far. And
I think look. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to the interview is what happened to the interview.
Yeah.
Because on its face, it's not a great movie. But
no, not at all.
You bet your ass, everybody in the world's going to want to see it. Because,
got buzz.
That thing just created crazy buzz. And so, you kind of get this. It's interesting. People always say, well, yes, you can say what you want to say, and then there's a but, and well, I mean, like, what's the but? You know what I mean? Like, there should be no but. Like, you just do your thing, you say what you want to say, and if people don't like it, then you move on. I mean, there was this, Charlie Hebdo's being criticized for being provocative and racist. This doesn't make them worthless. It just makes them Mel Gibson, Don Sterling, and every other racist guy that we ever know.
That's
right?
quite the stew. Holy shit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a good part of our House of Representatives, too, actually. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, this took a turn for the sad part. Wow, this is...
That's great.
Well, okay, we're going to end off on a
lighter...
lighter...
you wanted me to be funnier with it? Okay, here we go.
Well, Paul, thank you so much.
I'll tell you funny.
All right.
Why couldn't they find Osama bin Laden? The guy was 6'8". Just stand on a chair. Oh, there he is right there. That's a joke.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, he was dead a long time before they apparently killed him in SEAL Team 6. So that's my theory.
Exactly.
I think it was all fake. But anyway, Paul, thank you so much. So... You got what would you like to plug? So you got a date in Edmonton. So all our listeners in Alberta. So when exactly?
That's February 25th to March 1st in Edmonton,
Beautiful.
Alberta, Canada.
Where are you at the Edmonton Mall or?
Yeah, the Edmonton Mall, the Comic Strip Comedy Club, and then I've got a podcast on iTunes with Larry the Cable Guy is my guest as we speak.
I heard that one.
And I've had Paul McCartney on, and Jay Leno, Stephen Colbert.
When you first put Paul Mecurio onto the podcast search, Paul McCartney is one of the first ones that pop up, and I saw it. I'm like, holy shit! How the hell did Paul Mecurio get Paul McCartney to do his podcast? He just seems like the most busiest man alive.
2 words, my friend.
What?
2 words.
What?
Blowjob.
Oh, wait a minute. When I hang up this phone...
Are you learning how to make it in show business now? Kid, I met him at the Colbert Report, and he was doing the show. And I basically went up to him and said, he was in the hallway standing all alone, and I'm going by him,
Oh
and I'm
my
like,
God.
holy shit, that's Paul McCartney.
Jesus.
And I start talking to him, and we're just chit-chatting. 5 minutes, 10 minutes go by about kids and this
shooting
and
the
that
shit.
and whatever. And and eventually he goes, and by the way, as I'm talking to him, I'm getting closer and closer to his face, like that close talker, that like that scene in Seinfeld. Remember that episode? Like you ever see those chimps like on the National Geographic Channel, like that they're cleaning ticks off their mate? Like I was that close to his face.
Oh shit.
Because he's iconic. Like you never see this guy up close, and I'm like, holy, this is the guy, right?
Yeah.
So and now I'm delusional. So I say to myself, he should do my podcast.
Wow.
And as I say this to myself, I'm like, the guy's 71. He probably doesn't even know what a podcast is, right? So I go, excuse me, would you do my podcast? And he goes like this, yeah, sure, just like that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it totally blew my mind because I wasn't prepared for the I thought it was like, you ask that hot girl out and you know she's going to say no and you just ask her out to get it over with and then she says yes and you don't know what to do. Well, that was me. I was like, holy shit, right? So he goes, how would we do it? I'm like, I'll come to London. And he's like, we're in New York. What are you talking about, right? And then he said to me, is it easy? I go, yeah, it's really easy. I don't want to be a bother. You could do it, you could do it on the phone naked from your toilet. I'm like, what am I saying, right? So I get really flustered and I go, look, I'll leave you alone and I'll talk to your one of your assistants and get the thing from them.
Wow.
Information. He goes, nah, they'll muck it up. You and I'll do it. I go, what? He goes, yeah, you and I, we'll just coordinate it. I go, what? He goes, yeah. So we start exchanging phone numbers.
Oh, wow.
And I'm exchanging phone numbers with Paul McCartney. Let me give it to you right now.
Yeah.
917.
Do you ever drunk dial him or like drunk text?
Drunk dial. I drunk dialed him and raped him. Are you kidding me?
Or we like to call that the Cosby.
Nice. When I get off the phone, I'm going to Ray Rice my wife. So, there you go. Good night.
Oh, what a better note to get off on. Paul, that is awesome. Thank you so much. So, Facebook, Twitter, at Paul Mecurio, paulmecurio.com. People, check him out. Hilarious. Oh, just YouTube. There's a million clips. Anything else, Paul, we're missing out on?
No, man, you got it. And everybody spell it Mecurio. Don't spell it MER.
Yes.
Curio, because there's an Australian actor who is a dancer. If you go to his site, he's in tight pants and a tank top, and he's spraying water on himself, and you'll be like, I didn't know Paul was doing gay porn. That's not me. So
yeah, the first time I actually ever Googled your name when I first found you, that was the first thing I found. I'm like, this isn't the guy I was just listening to 20 minutes ago. I'm pretty sure it's not.
Exactly. I want to punch that son of a bitch in the face when I see him. And I'm going to Ray Rice the shit out of him. That's what I'm going to do.
He deserves it. He deserves it. But the podcast is the big thing right now. It's Paul Mecurio Show. Yes.
It's on iTunes, and
Perfect.
Really proud of all these cool guests. And I got Larry the Cable Guy up now, and he's got a really interesting story about how he created that character. I know some people think,
I heard he's a very smart guy and well spoken.
Very smart guy. He's a very nice guy, and I wanted people to know about him as a person, and he's a cool dude, and he's a really very sweet guy and a generous guy.
His upbringing, his dad, just listen. Go ahead.
You got a lot of comedy fans, so I think they would really appreciate that. What I try to do with my podcast is to kind of get behind how people got to where they are and let them reveal stuff about themselves, and that's what this interview with him does. But anyways, a lot of cool interviews on there across the board, so comedy, not comedy. So thanks, man. You guys are awesome. If you're coming to New York, give me a call.
Done.
Yeah, I'll be around. Sure.
Yeah, no.
No problem.
We're gonna find exactly where you live. We're gonna hold you up on that.
I'm on on Lexington Avenue and 52nd Street. That's right.
Hey, I know hotels are very expensive in Manhattan, so we're gonna crash at your couch.
Or at least sleep on a stoop.
Come on by. I'll leave a key for you. Just come on by.
Under the mat. All right.
There'll be a key. All right, guys. Don't get Ebola when you travel. All right.
We're gonna try not to. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Bye.